This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80, not to mention ESPN Radio, simulcast live over the national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up, as always, is 888 say ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. When a player doesn't like a contract, they hold out, right? Well, with Straight Talk Wireless, you never have to because there is no contract, and they use the exact same 4G LTE towers as the big carriers before, a lot less. Straight Talk Wireless only at Walmart. Refer to terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. We know what the lead story is today. It's not the Steelers and Antonio Brown. We'll get into that a little bit later. It's not the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell. We'll get into that a little bit later. It's not Patrick Mahomes and how Brett Favre's got him as the second coming of Brett Favre or Joe Montana or Dan Marino. We won't get into that until a little bit later on. But trust you me, we will get into that. Congratulations again to the New York Yankees for getting Aroldis Chapman back off of the DL. We like that part. Closer, 3-0, 2.11 ERA. God knows they need him. Good for them, good for them, good for them. Let me get into some football. The story that everybody is talking about, the story that's on everybody's mind today, is a new book written by the great Ian O'Connor. For those of you who don't know, longtime writer for the New York Daily News, used to write for the New York Newsday as well. One of the most outstanding writers we have ever seen in this nation. He's the author of the new book, Belichick, The Making of the Greatest Football Coach of All Time. He wrote this following the 2017 NFL season. It is a book that Bill Belichick did not cooperate with, but the great Ian O'Connor wrote the book anyway. And the headline all over the national airwaves today, in particular ESPN.com, is that the new book says Tom Brady, the great Tom Brady, long worried about being, quote, pushed out, end quote, by Bill Belichick. And I'll read the first few graphs to y'all, so y'all hear where I'm coming from. The New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady felt trapped this past offseason and was not sure he wanted to play anymore for the only NFL coach he has ever had, Bill Belichick, according to a new book on Belichick's life. Quote, if you're married 18 years to a grouchy person who gets under your skin and never compliments you, after a while you want to divorce him. This is what a source told Ian O'Connor, and it's a source with knowledge of the Brady-Belichick relationship. It continues. Tom knows Bill is the best coach in the league, but he's had enough of him. If Tom could, I think he would divorce him. End quote. The book actually is based on interviews with 350 people, none of them Belichick. The book, due out Tuesday, reports Brady was so upset with his coach that he still wasn't certain as of late March, this past March, if he would return to the Patriots. Quote, but in the end, even if he wanted to, Brady could not walk away from the game, and he could not ask for a trade. The moment Belichick moved Jimmy Garoppolo to San Francisco and banked on Brady's oft-stated desire to play at least into his mid-40s was the moment Brady was virtually locked into suiting up next season and beyond. Had he retired or requested a trade, he would have risked turning an adoring New England public into an angry mob, end quote. Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. After Bill Belichick, widely considered to have loved Garoppolo so much that he wanted the Tom Brady era to come to an end so the Jimmy Garoppolo era could start. I mean, when you look at it from that perspective, the fact of the matter is this. Tom Brady could not have been glowingly happy about that. You're 40 years of age. You're playing at an MVP caliber level. You just lost the Super Bowl, but it damn sure wasn't your fault. Matter of fact, it was more Bill Belichick's fault than yours because Bill Belichick elected to take a guy in Malcolm Butler, who was your premier corner, looking for a new contract, having turned down a couple of offers from you, which made you a bit salty, no doubt, if you're Bill Belichick, and Patriots brass. And you took a guy that played 97.8% of the snaps during the regular season, 100% of the snaps against Tennessee in the divisional playoff game, 100% of the snaps in the AFC championship game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And suddenly, this dude can't get 5 seconds of playing time in the Super Bowl. That's what happened to Malcolm Butler. I think we saw his face once for those 5 seconds during special teams. Outside of that, we didn't see Malcolm Butler. What we did see was him on the sideline being consoled because he was literally crying over being benched and not being able to play. Early in the week, he was in the hospital. He was feeling ill. He hadn't been performing exceptionally well in practice. And it's everybody and their mother who loves Bill Belichick brought the line, hook, line, and sinker that he was doing what he felt was in the best interest of the team. Nonsense. Nonsense. Now, Bill Belichick and his ego may have thought he could have won the Super Bowl without Malcolm Butler, but he clearly did not make that decision because he thought it was in the best interest of the New England Patriots in terms of winning that Super Bowl. He did not believe, definitively anyway, that Malcolm Butler's exit from the lineup gave the New England Patriots the best chance to win. There's no way in hell that he thought that. And anybody who thinks that, you got your head in the sand. You're living in fantasy world. No, Bill Belichick may have believed he could have won in spite of Malcolm Butler, but he certainly didn't believe that Malcolm Butler's omission gave him the best chance to win. Stop that. Now let me get to Tom Brady. If you are in places like New York, for example, where you see the disintegration of an Eli Manning taking place before our very eyes. If you are in a place like L.A., even though Phillip Rivers is big time, but has never won you anything, and you're contemplating life without Phillip Rivers, and you're thinking it might be time to move on eventually, particularly if you're peaking to the Midwest, to Kansas City, Missouri, and seeing Patrick Mahomes throw the football the way that he's throwing the football, saying, damn, I wish I had that guy. If you're in some place like that, it's perfectly and entirely understandable. And entirely understandable. Why? You would sit up there and say, you know something? Bill Belichick was right to want Tom Brady gone so Jimmy Garoppolo could be the heir apparent. But if you're in New England, or if you are rife with sense like I am, you're like, hell no. It's not that keeping Tom Brady at 41 years of age ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo is not. It's not like it's not a gamble. Nobody's denying that it's a gamble. The question is it a gamble worth taking? For a 5-time Super Bowl champion? Yes. For a guy that's been to 8 Super Bowls? Yes. For a 5-time champion who's been to 8 Super Bowls, who's shown minimal, if any signs at all of dissipating or diminishing or eroding before our very eyes. Is Tom Brady worth the gamble? You're damn right he is. And anybody who calls up here and tells me otherwise, it damn sure better not be because of Jimmy Garoppolo. And I like Jimmy. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a damn good quarterback. And I think he has tremendous promise. And obviously, he's probably going to have a longer career than the career that Tom Brady has left. I got it. But I ask a simple question to all of you out there, and make sense out of this for me. If you have Bill Belichick as your coach, and Bill Belichick is supposed to be this boy genius that he is, why can't he go out and find another Jimmy Garoppolo? If some weak, no good punk of an assistant coach who decides to attach his name to an anonymous quote saying that Bill Belichick and Bill Belichick's system is what has fostered Tom Brady's success, that there's a multitude of quarterbacks that could come out there and do what Tom Brady has done. How come you can't go out and find another Jimmy Garoppolo? Since it's the system, right? Since it's not Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady got hurt game 1 of the 2008 season off of a hit that messed up his ACL, and he missed the rest of the season. Ladies and gentlemen, do y'all realize that Tom Brady hasn't missed a game since then? Since 2009, 9 years. The only game that Tom Brady has missed is the games that Roger Goodell suspended him for Deflategate. That's it. That's it. And because Jimmy Garoppolo comes in there and wins you 2 games, and Jacoby Brissett wins 1, all of a sudden, Bill Belichick and his system is a damn genius. And oh, by the way, if Bill Belichick is such this genius, and I'm not knocking the fact that he's a phenomenal coach, I understand that, but I'm just attributing to what the assistant coach said. If Bill Belichick's system is such genius, why the hell haven't his assistant coaches succeeded once they departed from him? They knew the system. Bill O'Brien didn't know the system in Houston. Romeo Crennel didn't know the system in Cleveland and Kansas City. Charlie White didn't know the system at Notre Dame. Eric Mangini didn't know the system at the New York Jets. Matt Patricia, even though he's only 2 games in, 0-2, he didn't know the system that he's worked under. Josh McDaniels didn't know it in Denver. If he is such a genius, to the point that assistant coaches, weak punks that they are, who don't want to give their names to anything, can have the temerity, the unmitigated gall to go out there and say, you know what, it's not Tom Brady, it's the system. How come you can't go out there and find another Jimmy Garoppolo then? Once Tom Brady decides to walk into the sunset. The only evidence we have of Bill Belichick winning without Tom Brady is the 2008 season that Matt Castle won 11-5, and the 4 games without Tom Brady that he went 3-1. Other than that, Tom Brady has been your quarterback for the last 18 years. 18 years. He doesn't deserve this. He's cut his salary. He's modified his salary. He's restructured his deal. He's taking less money, facilitating Belichick and his system to get the players he wanted and needed so they could compete. And that's not taking anything away from Bill Belichick, because there's a lot that goes into coaching. And there's a lot that goes into running an organization. And there's tentacles coming from all over the place. And it's Bill Belichick's job to manage all of that. So he is phenomenal. But it's easier to do with Tom Brady. A hell of a lot easier to do with Tom Brady than without him. Ian O'Connor, the author of this book, Belichick, the making of the greatest football coach of all time, he will be on the show with us in approximately 17 minutes or so. Interested in getting some more details from him. But it's utterly ridiculous that these folks talk about Tom Brady this way. It's utterly ridiculous. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. There's something else I want to get into. Antonio Brown skipped yesterday. Antonio Brown skipped, whether it was practice or film at the team facility yesterday. Mike Tomlin addressed the media, said he's going to talk to Antonio Brown about it, but it'll be between him and Antonio Brown and Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown was last seen on the sidelines Sunday arguing with offensive coordinator Randy Fichtner, and his frustration boiled over. Now, obviously, you're Big Ben Roethlisberger and others. You're going to sit up there and you're going to say, hey, he's Antonio Brown. And in Big Ben's case, he came to his defense. Big Ben Roethlisberger said this about his wide receiver, Antonio Brown. I think he's the best in the world. When you're the best in the world, you want to help participate. You want to win football games. We're all a little frustrated that we're not winning right now, end quote. Antonio Brown has been targeted more than anybody on the Steelers in their passing attack. He's been targeted 33 times. Both he and Juju Smith-Schuster have 18 receptions on the season, although Juju Smith-Schuster has 80 more yards receiving than Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is a diva. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that with wide receivers. I don't have a problem with wide receivers being divas. I think that's what makes them who they are, and it's what makes them great. And I have no issue with it. Here's what I'll tell you I have an issue with. And it's time that it needs to be said, so I'm going to say it. I have a problem with these players acting up. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a problem. I don't have a problem with Le'Veon Bell holding out for his money. I do have a problem with him partying in South Beach and making sure everybody knows it and sees it, where he's rapping on stage or he's in the speedboat enjoying life. He's like, hey, y'all fine without me? We'll see. He's rubbing it in their face. This is a team he has to go back to in order to be eligible for free agency in 2019. That's not a good look. And you know how football players are because the sport is so violent. Anybody that isn't there to contribute, thereby giving them the best chance to win, and they're doing so on purpose, these players are going to be a bit salty towards them. And I don't think it's wise for Le'Veon Bell to do what he did. In the case of Antonio Brown, I don't like the petulance. I understand it, and I understand the diva-like mentality. He wants the ball more, wants to be targeted more, et cetera, et cetera. And him and Juju Smith-Schuster are not on the same level, regardless of how good Juju Smith-Schuster is. But I will say this. I'm going to tell you the problem I got with all of them. Le'Veon, Antonio, Ramon Foster, and Pouncey, and all of these other guys. I'm going to tell you the problem I got with all of them. And I don't know if anybody's going to say it, so I will. I got a problem with the position they're putting Mike Tomlin in. Mike Tomlin is not to be absolved from blame here. He's the head coach. The buck stops with him. If this kind of dysfunctionality is raking through the franchise and through the team locker room, and it appears to be in virus-like fashion, it's Mike Tomlin's job to address it and put a nail in this coffin once and for all, which he is more than capable of doing. He has to do that. And if he doesn't do that, that's on Mike Tomlin. But don't come to me trying to absolve the players. Don't do that. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to put it to y'all this way. It hits me in a sensitive level when I see black coaches go through this. That's right, I said it. Because you see, this is like black on black crime. Nobody else is going to say it. Certainly, I don't know of any white host that would say it. I'll do it for them. It's not about a race thing. I'm not even talking about white folks. I'm talking about black folks. You see, when you lament the fact, particularly in a sport of college football, certainly more so than the NFL, but particularly in a sport of college football, where you see the paucity or the scarcity of African-American coaches. One of the things that those same coaches, you're listening to a journalist for 25 years now. One of the things those coaches have lamented ad nauseum in years past was that black coaches were held to a different standard. And knowing the X's and O's wasn't enough. You had to show and ingratiate yourself with decision makers in such a way to convince them that you could be a leader of men. Because obviously, you had a preponderance of white coaches who never had that problem. But if you want to be a coach, particularly of African-American descent, that's what you got to walk in there ready to prove. Because as Bob McNair, the owner for the Texans, once said in regards to the Colin Kaepernick issue, not this, you can't let the inmates run the prisons. Now, he meant asylum, but he said prison, but that's neither here nor there. You understand the mentality. That's the point. The point is, there always must be order. And I get that line from the movie American Gangster, when Denzel was sitting down with the Italian mobster. And the Italian mobster was lamenting to him the state of affairs going on in the streets of Harlem and beyond. He said that would never be allowed in my community. There must be order. There always must be order. And my point is, those players of African-American descent know that. And I'll get a little personal with y'all. You know, once upon a time, after being my deputy sports editor at the Philadelphia Inquirer, There's a wonderful gentleman and a friend by the name of Rob King, who was running SportsCenter for ESPN. Once upon a time, before he was one of the leading editors at ESPN, there was a wonderful gentleman by the name of Leon Carter, who was also my assistant sports editor at the New York Daily News. Present day here at ESPN, there's a wonderful boss that I have. His name is Dave Roberts. He also happens to be a black man. Just like Rob King, just like Leon Carter. I cannot tell you how covering football and basketball and other sports, how many times leaders from black communities talk about the importance of being allowed to lead, and how on far too many occasions they get tested primarily by black athletes who don't accord them the same respect and deference they would give to one of their white contemporaries. I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, you ain't looking at that person here. I'm going to work hard no matter what. I'm going to always give 100%. I shortchange nobody. But do I have a heightened level of sensitivity and feelings of obligation to produce for my bosses of African American descent? You're damn right I do. And I don't apologize for it. And here's why. Because just like I would support my white bosses, and they know I do, I make sure that at the very least I show exactly the same accordance of respect and deference, if not more so, to African Americans in positions of influence and power. Because how can we ever get to that place if you have talent who doesn't do so? I've said it many, many times before. White folks come to work with a job to do. Black folks come with a responsibility. Because unlike the white community, our community looks at one another and holds us accountable to each other more so than arguably any community out there. I understand it. I accept it. And I make sure not to shortchange anybody. I really wish that the Pittsburgh Steelers did the same for Mike Tomlin. You can win games, you can lose games. But what you can't do is act as dysfunctionally as they have been acting on his watch. He might keep his job anyway. But it'll be a hell of a lot harder to do if they continue to act like a bunch of irresponsible kids instead of grown professionals like they're paid to do. I've waited for somebody to say that. No one did. So damn it, I'm doing it for you. To the Pittsburgh Steelers, every one of y'all inside of that locker room, but especially those players who happen to resemble my pigmentation and come from the same culture that I do. Grow the hell up. Open your damn eyes. And be sensitive to somebody other than your damn self. Maybe then we can get to talking about football again with the Pittsburgh Steelers, instead of the damn dysfunctionality raking through their franchise like a virus. Ian O'Connor, the author of the new book on Bill Belichick, the making of the greatest football coach of all time. He's up next with yours truly right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Guys, let's be real. When you look good, you feel good. At the JCPenney wardrobe sale, you can get 50% off select men's suits, separate sport coats, dress pants, and accessories. Plus, select dress shirts, buy one, get one free. Raise your game with Collection by Michael Strahan. All the right looks to take your style to the next level. Also, save an extra 20% off with your JCPenney credit card and coupon, or extra 15% off with any other method of payment. Hurry in. JCPenney. Style and value for all. Pricing and coupon valid 9/13 and 9/23. Credit offer subject to credit approval. Some exclusions and restrictions apply. See store jcp.com for coupon and details.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
My honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line. He is the author of the new book on Bill Belichick, the making of the greatest football coach of all time. He is a great, phenomenal columnist, somebody that I've known for many, many years, my buddy, formerly of the New York Newsday, formerly of the New York Daily News, writes for ESPN as well. Incredible author, one of the greatest writers I've ever seen, the one and only Ian O'Connor is on the line with yours truly. What's going on, Ian? How are you, buddy?
Hey, Stephen A. I got to tell a little story to your audience to start out. When I was at the New York Daily News and Stephen A. was covering high school basketball, if I remember correctly, probably making $37,000. I said to, I believe it was Barry Werner, the sports editor at the time, might have been Leon Carter, but I remember saying this. I said, this guy's not going to be covering high school basketball for very long. And that's, I'm terrible with predictions, including the one I made on Belichick in 2000, but I was right on that one. So congratulations on your epic success in this industry.
Well, I appreciate it. And, I've always appreciated you, buddy. Let's get right to this book that you've written. First of all, it says here that Belichick did not cooperate with you for this book. You interviewed over 350 people. Mm-hmm. What inspired you to write this book, and why do you think he didn't cooperate?
Well, first off, I did write a column in 2000 saying it was a bad hire when Robert Kraft made that hire. A lot of people felt that way back then, but right now it looks like the craziest take of all time. So I'll take that one to my grave. But I was always fascinated as to how he became what he became, because a lot of the league back then didn't believe in him. The New York Giants, who loved him as an assistant, who thought he was right there with Lombardi and Tom Landry as the greatest assistants they ever had, they did not believe in Bill Belichick as a head coach. So I was always fascinated by just how he did it, how he pulled it off, how this human being and what we saw in Cleveland turned it around in New England. It's not as simple as Tom Brady, Stephen A., walking into his life. It can't be that simple. So I wanted to study his program, study that dynasty. I did it over 3 years. And I also wanted to humanize him. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but that character, that one-dimensional character that he plays in his news conferences, that's not Bill Belichick.
I agree.
Away from the facility. And I don't know how often you've interacted with him. A little bit. Yeah, he's an and I did not have a relationship with him going into this project, and still don't. I think he didn't cooperate because maybe it had something to do with the fact he doesn't like me so much. He remembers that column I wrote. Maybe it has nothing to do with that, and it's just if he can't control the process, if he can't control the narrative, he's not going to get involved. So I don't know what his reasoning was. He doesn't owe me anything. I fully get that. Mm-hmm. He did ask some people also not to talk to me beside himself. So I worked around it. I grinded. And in a sense, what he does for a living, he puts obstacles in front of players and coaches and makes them better. I think he put a lot of obstacles in front of me. And on a certain level, he made me better. And that's how how it played out.
I'm very interested in, and obviously everybody is, in the relationship with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. What it was at the beginning, what it was midway through everything. It seems to have eroded drastically. If you had something to pinpoint the erosion that apparently has taken place between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, what exactly would that erosion be? And why exactly do you believe it has happened?
Well, it was always a functioning partnership, transactional. You do for me, I do for you. There was really never any love or warmth in that relationship. The love and warmth comes between Kraft and Brady. So that's where Tom gets that. But it was the greatest, and it is the greatest partnership in the history of the NFL. And I would say the starting point for where things started to get to a place where you saw this confrontation being inevitable. It was the drafting of Jimmy Garoppolo in 2014. That night, Bill Belichick cited Tom's age, his contract status, and he said, I'd rather be early than late at the quarterback position. And ever since that point, Brady was worried that Garoppolo was going to take his job at some point. And clearly Belichick fell in love with Jimmy G as a young player. He really likes him, I think, as a person, loves him as a prospect. And Brady felt that. Now, he elevated his game. He outplayed the plan. He outperformed the machine, the Belichick machine. that basically nudges out and pushes out every made man in Foxborough over the years. You know, the long parade of players who've been great for them, who've been moved out early. But Brady forced Belichick to trade Garoppolo. I think later on last season, Belichick sort of regains control of the relationship by cutting team access to Alex Guerrero, Tom's business partner and life coach, right? Fitness coach. And then Brady regains control of the relationship in the offseason by becoming the only starting quarterback not to report to OTAs. Out of 32, 31 reported, he was the one who didn't. So there was a standoff. My sources told me, Stephen A., in late March, as late as late March, he was still considering not playing for Belichick and stepping away from the game.
We talk about Brady still considering not playing for Belichick and the New England Patriots and stepping away from the game because of his frustrations. What about the notion that Belichick might have been frustrated? You just articulated how Brady won the war between him and Garoppolo because Belichick didn't want to trade Garoppolo and ultimately was forced to do so. You articulated that process. Then Brady doesn't show up for training camp after, Belichick had banned his life coach, his fitness coach, Alex Guerrero, from there. But ultimately that was modified or overturned, rather. Clearly that could not have happened without the blessing of owner Robert Kraft. What about Belichick walking away? What about Belichick saying, I don't need this, and going to coach for somebody else? Have you heard anything as to whether or not that was possible?
I think he was frustrated at the end of last season, Stephen A., particularly the morning of the AFC Championship game against Jacksonville. Robert Kraft was on the NFL Network, and there was a quote. I think Willie McGinnis might have asked him the question about the Seth Wickersham reports of conflict and turmoil within. And Kraft gave an answer and talked about everyone needs to keep their egos in check. Well, I was told by someone who knows Belichick well that Bill took that personally. He took that as a shot at him, and he did not like that at all. Now, somebody close to Robert Kraft told me it was not intended as a direct shot at Belichick, that it was a general comment, whatever. But listen, I think Bill Belichick is a young 66. I think he was very frustrated at times last year with the way things played out. It's funny, we're talking about last year as if it were a disaster. They went to the Super Bowl again. They lost a one-possession game, and their quarterback threw for over 500 yards, and people talk about it as an unmitigated train wreck.
Well, the reason why, let me interrupt you there, Ian. The reason why I would go that route is because you decide, if you're Bill Belichick, to bench a cornerback that you have played 97.8% of the snaps during the regular season and 100% of the snaps during the postseason. I'm thinking that might be a good reason why people were looking at Bill Belichick a bit salty.
And that's a fair reason. I think everyone on that team, I can't say everyone, but a lot of players felt the way Danny Amendola felt, what he expressed to Mike Reese about just being confused and angry about that situation. And Bill Belichick has done a lot of unconventional things in big games. This was an unconventional thing that he did at the start of the game by benching Butler. I think he had a plan. Obviously, at halftime, that plan wasn't working. And to me, you understand this is the greatest coach ever. He did something unconventional. He's done it in the past in Super Bowls. Okay, but at halftime, when it's clear it's not working, and basically you've got an hour at the Super Bowl practically to make halftime adjustments, how he didn't go back to Butler in the second half and instead went to Batamosi, who missed, to me, maybe the biggest tackle in the game, or one of the biggest. That is where I think you can really hit him for not going to Butler in the second half.
We're talking to the great Ian O'Connor, author of the new book, Belichick, The Making of the Greatest Football Coach of All Time. He's right here with yours truly, Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. With all of that being said, Ian, I know you well enough and long enough to know you're not just an exceptional writer. You're also an exceptional reporter. You do your homework. You know what you're talking about. You do your research, et cetera, et cetera. I'm wondering right now, as we look at these New England Patriots, if you had to venture to guess, who would be going from New England first, Belichick or Brady?
I would say probably Brady, although I think they're both, Stephen A., going to be around for a long time. It might be a little bit of a race to see who's out of there first, or who can last longer. I think that Brady's looking at 45. I talked to him last year on the phone for an ESPN piece where I brought up 46, 47, 48, even 50. At some point, some athlete is going to prove he can play at a competitive level at age 50, right? And maybe Tom Brady's that person.
No, some would argue George Foreman did it, but okay.
Yeah, well, how old was George when he beat Michael Moore?
I don't know.
I think he was 48?
It like 48, 49?
Okay,
I think so.
50.
Bernard tried, but he ran into a couple of people.
Right.
School like Sergei Kovalev.
Right. And I love your stuff on boxing, by the way. I'm a big boxing guy. But So in team sports, Brady, if he ever got to 50, obviously would be the first significant team sport athlete in America to do that. And I don't think that's going to happen. But we talked about 46 and 47 being very realistic. So I think Belichick is a really young 66. He looks like he still has a lot of energy. He loves what he does. He might coach till he's 73. I know in the past he said he's not going to do that. He's not going to be Marv Levy, but I think he will.
But last question to you, because as you pointed out, Belichick is a control freak. He likes to control the narrative, like most great coaches, him, Nick Saban, and others. They want to control the narrative. They want to, if they can't control something, they don't really want to be a part of it. Well, doesn't the trade of Jimmy Garoppolo, doesn't the reemergence of Alex Guerrero, the fitness and life coach, prove that the level of institutional control that Belichick is accustomed to having, particularly in New England, no longer exists? And if so, what would be the incentive for him to stick around?
Well, I guess he could have even walked away this offseason if he really felt that strongly about it. He didn't do that. I think he loves the game too much. He was not happy about having to.
He'd get another job.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty easy, right?
Right.
But he didn't. And I think he's going to retire his job. I could see him maybe, Stephen A., becoming the president of the Patriots, and then Josh McDaniels takes over. I still think he got past this situation with Tom Brady. They were going to have one big clash in their careers, and they had it. And their relationship, their transactional relationship, survived barely. But now, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So maybe they move on, and they're okay for the next 3-4 years. I do believe they have one more championship in them. I think Belichick and Brady will get to 6, and I think 6 means a lot to both. For Belichick, he breaks the tie with Vince Lombardi. For Brady, he ties Michael Jordan. And a lot of great guys, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Derek Jeter, got to 5, couldn't get to 6. I think Tom Brady wants to get to 6.
Ian O'Connor, author for the new book, Belichick, The Making of the Greatest Football Coach of All Time. He's right here with yours truly. Ian, always appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, same here, Stephen. Thank you.
All right, the one and only Ian O'Connor right here with Stephen A.
Guys, let's be real. When you look good, you feel good. At the JCPenney wardrobe sale, you can get 50% off select men's suits separate, sport coats, dress pants, and accessories. Plus, select dress shirts, buy one, get one free. Raise your game with Collection by Michael Strahan. All the right looks to take your style to the next level. Also, save an extra 20% off with your JCPenney credit card and coupon, or extra 15% off with any other method of payment. Hurry in. JCPenney. Style and value for all. Pricing and coupon valid 9/13 and 9/23. Credit offer subject to credit approval. Some exclusions and restrictions apply. See store at jcp.com for coupon and details.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. It is my honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line. Now, I shouldn't say on the line. He's sitting right next to me. You know him as the mouth of the South. I never call him that. I tell folks that people call him that, but I never call him that because I don't consider Paul Finebaum a college football expert. I consider him a football expert. It don't matter what level it's on. If it's football, he knows it. The one and only Paul Finebaum has his own show, by the way, SEC Network and Beyond, right here for ESPN Radio, or the Paul Finebaum Show. Paul, good to see you, buddy, as always. How you doing?
Thank you.
Man?
It is a pleasure to be here.
Got a lot to talk to you about. First order of business is that daggone Urban Meyer. I got to get that out the way because I saw that interview with Tom Rinaldi just the other day. And before I even get into it a little bit, let me just ask you the question. What did you peel from the interview? What did you walk away thinking after watching him sit down with our very own Tom Rinaldi?
That Urban Meyer could not let the story rest. Remember when we were kids, your mom would say, just let sleeping dogs lie.
Right.
He got the story was a mess. He cleaned it up at different intervals. Stephen A. Mm-hmm. Finally, he had the press conference, which was a disaster. He issued a comment 2 days later apologizing to Courtney Smith. Mm-hmm. That should have been it. But then he had to issue something on Twitter. It's like he's a Supreme Court justice or running for one. Mm-hmm. And then he had to do that interview, and it served no purpose. I know we are sounding like a broken record here, but in the end, I think his character was even more revealed than it had been previously, that he doesn't believe the victim in this case. He doesn't buy her story, that he just got along to get along. And he's going to coach now on the sideline, so he really just doesn't care.
Who did you walk away more concerned or more alarmed by? Was it him? Was it members on that committee that are from Ohio State University? Is it that? Or is it the fan base of the Ohio State Buckeyes that seem to be apologetic or downright defiant in support of him? Who did you walk away?
Let's talk about the fan base for a second.
Sure.
Because I realize we're talking about Ohio State's fan base, but I will tell you, and you've dealt with them all before. It's like when you talk about the Cowboy fans. They are similar, but in this case, I've dealt, and others have dealt with Ohio State fans now for going on 2 months, and they just don't care what the truth is. They're going to defend their guy, and instead of trying to digest the truth, all they want to do is attack the messenger. Say that whether it's you or me or anyone else at ESPN, you are the enemy, and we are not the enemy. We're disseminating a story very fairly, I think. And one thing, I'll give Urban credit. He stood up and answered questions the other day. His answers made no sense, but at least he answered questions, unlike most people.
Right.
And these fans, I don't know why they are covering for a man who enabled someone who was involved in domestic violence.
Do you think Ohio State, looking at them, how loaded they appear to be with Gaskins leading the way, and they've got some talent on that squad, no doubt about it. They're one of the top 4 teams in the nation. Some would say top 2. We'll see. Do you think Ohio State this year needs Urban Meyer to win football games and make the college football playoffs?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think in the first 3 games they showed they can win.
Yeah, now, against Oregon State, Rutgers, and TCU.
Listen,
yes.
I've never coached. Maybe you have.
I haven't. I haven't.
The two of us we would have been 2-0.
That's right.
Against TCU, I don't know. I'm not sure I could have called the right play in the right time, but they got by. But they will need Urban Meyer to go to Happy Valley. They'll need him to beat Michigan State. They'll need him to beat Michigan. Oh, well, I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure about that either. I'm not sure about that either, Paul.
But you coach that game. I'll coach the Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin, and I think I can coach them to a win over Wisconsin after what I saw the other day.
How about that?
So they'll need. You're not going to have an interim coach against Nick Saban or Dabo Swinney. I mean, Urban Meyer 2 years ago got run out of the college football playoff 31-0 against Dabo Swinney. So they need him in those games.
We're talking to the great Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. You brought up Happy Valley. You brought up Penn State. As of right now, at least in one of the polls, they're ranked 10th in the nation. Your thoughts about what you've seen from Penn State thus far, obviously with Saquon Barkley now gone from their squad?
Well, I mean, he is gone, but Trace McSorley has come up. I mean, he is playing lights out. And I think at home, their college football home field really matters, Stephen A. You can quibble about it in any other sport. Yeah. But on that Saturday night, a week from now, it's going to be difficult to win there. Ohio State could not do that. Has not always been able to do that in the past. So I like what I see. I mean, they've looked sloppy at times. They had a terrible beginning with Appalachian State, but we see that a lot. College football is an emotional game, and it's easy to write the Big Ten off right now because, I mean, they have had so many embarrassing losses, but I still believe that Ohio State and Penn State are the class.
Now, over the last 2 games, Penn State has outscored, albeit against Pittsburgh and Kent State, Kent rather. They've outscored them 113-13 for crying out loud.
Pittsburgh was supposed to be okay.
All right, Pittsburgh was supposed to be okay. They won 51-6. I'll give credit where credit is due. Right now, is it just plain and simple that Alabama is the number 1 team in the nation? Is it even close?
If I had been here, and I was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would have told you I thought Clemson could be better on one level because I thought their defense was so ferocious, but they were underwhelming against A&M. Now, let's not prop A&M up, okay? Right. I mean, they're a good team. They're not great. So, I mean, right now I think it's possible that Ohio State is the second best team in the country based on what we saw the other night. So the answer to your question is no one can play with Alabama right now. They are at a different level. They've been there before, but the difference between the past and this year, they were winning on defense in the past. Their offense, they will just blow you away. We haven't seen a whole game out of Tua. And if Nick Saban had wanted to, they could have scored 100 points against Ole Miss Saturday night.
What were your thoughts about how Nick Saban elected to handle the quarterback situation? I'm not even talking about going off on Maria Taylor on the football field. We discussed that already. Sure. But I'm just talking about overall his handling of the quarterback situation thus far this season. I thought he made suspense out of nothing. It clearly, I mean, if Tua's going to come in for the national championship game, okay, and you're going to bench Hurts at halftime to bring Tua in, and he wins a national championship for you. I don't think it takes Einstein to figure out, or even a Belichick or Saban caliber person to figure out that Tua's going to be your starting quarterback.
Nick Saban always thinks differently than everyone else. His goal with every statement, with every message, is about recruiting. And some people think he's talking to his team. He doesn't need the media to talk to his team. He can talk to his team. But he does talk to prospects. And I think he was concerned if he just was dismissive of Jalen Hurts, throw him out like the garbage, it was going to set a bad message, especially with Jalen Hurts' father being volatile or potentially volatile. He's already made some pretty strong statements. So I think he babied it. That's why he blew up with Maria. It was ridiculous. We mentioned it, but he was trying to say, I'm protecting my guy. Here's the interesting thing. Everyone says it's over. It's not over. This is the fourth game Saturday. This is when the action starts. I thought, if he plays in the Arkansas State game. But this will be the last time he can play without blowing a redshirt year. So the real question is, does Jalen Hurts play next week against Louisiana Lafayette? I know you're going to DVR that game.
I'm thinking about it. We're talking to Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Your thoughts about the job Jimbo Fisher's doing down at Texas A&M? He's
done a lot of things, but most important, and this is a cliche, Stephen A., and you hear it in the NFL, you hear it in every sport. But I was down there 3 weeks ago, and I believe it because I saw it, and then the A&M game proved it.
Yeah,
he has changed that culture. That was a soft culture under Kevin Sumlin. Kevin Sumlin was a good coach, but Texans are different. They're tough, and they want a guy to come in there and put the cowboy boots on, whether he's never worn them before in his life, and act like he belongs. And Jimbo Fisher has mastered that, and he's done something else which is even more important in college football. He is recruiting well, and he's recruiting well at the expense of the University of Texas. I don't know how the University of Texas loses a recruit in that state, but they are to A&M.
Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. I'm going to take a left turn here, and I want to ask you this question. And I've already addressed the race aspect of it, and I'm not asking you to do that by any stretch, Paul. But I want to know, because you brought up the soft culture at Texas A&M. I'm going to transition this to the NFL a little bit there, and I'm going to throw in the two. I mentioned Mike Tomlin and what's transpiring in Pittsburgh. Right. I've mentioned, and a lot of people have mentioned Kevin Sumlin, who we both know is a damn good coach. He knows football. He's a damn good coach. But you talked about the culture at Texas A&M that existed with him there that doesn't exist now that Jimbo Fisher is there. What do you think is the reason for that? Overall in football, what's the reason for a soft culture, and what's the common denominator as it pertains to your knowledge?
Well, I think in someone's case, he didn't play the games. Now, you can take that a step farther, but the games out there are suck up to the usual suspects, suck up to the chancellor, and he didn't do it. He didn't really care. He came in there hot. He was at Houston. Johnny Manziel was lightning in a bottle, and he just did his thing because that's who he was. And so ultimately he got in trouble. He lost games at home. I was out there a couple of years ago, and one of the big boosters said, we got to win these games at home. I mean, as if the games on the road didn't matter, but they really care about what happens in that stadium. It could be they spent about $500 million.
And it seats 100,000. They took me out to midfield. I did first take from there one day, and they took me out to the field to show me the stadium.
So you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, how it relates to your question is a more interesting issue. I think Kevin Sumlin just didn't mix very well out there, and does that?
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm looking at that. I guess what I was asking about was because I look at the coaches and I look at the relationship with the players itself. And I think that when you ingratiate yourself with the players, like some coaches do, whereas other coaches are far more disciplinarian and they're distant from the players, I'm looking at it in the case of Belichick and Saban on a pro and collegiate level, it works. In the case of others, it may not work as effectively, although it works for them to some degree, just not as effectively as those disciplinarian coaches.
We're about to get into something interesting here.
Sure.
I thought someone blew it on Johnny Manziel.
Explain.
Now, as soon as I say that, he let him get away with everything. He didn't want to upset the prize. He totally screwed it up. Now, as I say that, I have to say this. I think Jimbo Fisher screwed up the Jameis Winston situation.
Right.
Badly. Worse than Kevin Sumlin.
Wow.
He enabled him. And I think that was the beginning of the downfall of Florida State. So what's fascinating about this is Jimbo Fisher is now in College Station, the conquering hero. He left a mess behind for Willie Taggart. Now, Willie Taggart hasn't done one thing to help it.
That's right.
Assuming he can do anything. I don't know. So but Jimbo, I mean, I was on record, and I know you were too, just excoriating him for his handling of Jameis Winston. Mm-hmm. He never showed an ounce of discipline to him. Now suddenly he's at A&M, and he's
we're making $75 million.
Yeah, he's the toughest man in Texas.
There you go, Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. Kyler Murray at Oklahoma was at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
With Sumlin, decided to transfer.
5-star.
And now look at this guy. He's completed 67% of his passes. He's thrown for over 860 yards in, 2-3 games? This guy looks like a Heisman Trophy candidate. Talk to me about him.
Kevin Sumlin, I don't want to beat up on him too badly because he recruited these guys, but I think he ended up seeing 3 5-star quarterbacks bail out of there.
Yeah. And
Kenny Hill being one, and obviously Kyler blew out of there as well because he just didn't handle it very well. The answer to the question here is Lincoln Riley. I didn't believe it when he was named. I said, this guy's too young.
Yeah. Especially succeeding Stoops.
But he's been unbelievable as far as tutoring quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield was not Baker Mayfield before. I mean, Lincoln had a couple of years with him. Don't misunderstand me, but
right.
He's that good, and I'm not trying to say he's leaving Oklahoma. That's a career-ending stop for most people, but right. I think a lot of people are going to be after Lincoln Riley pretty quickly because I knew Kyler Murray at A&M. He wasn't really very good.
Talk to me about the number 2 ranked team in the nation according to the AP poll, Georgia. Now, they've only given up 24 points this season. 17 of it came against South Carolina, but even that was a blowout, particularly in the second half. They've scored over 40 in each game. Your thoughts about how much of a legitimate shot they have at winning the national title?
I think they have a shot. They have a couple of tricky games, and no one laugh out there in the hinterlands, but they go to Missouri this weekend. Missouri overall should not be able to deal with them, but Missouri has a quarterback I want you to keep your eye on, Drew Lock.
Okay. I've heard about him.
I mean, the NFL loves this guy, and he will put up some big numbers. And if he can keep it going against them, that will be an interesting game.
I am so glad you just brought that up because, Paul Finebaum, I needed you on this show today desperately for this reason. Above all else, everybody and their mother is telling me this guy, Patrick Mahomes, is so special in the National Football League. I mean, look at this guy. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to win a Super Bowl because this guy's the second coming of Dan Marino. And I'm like, where did he play? Wasn't he at Texas Tech a couple of years ago? What am I missing, Paul Finebaum? You're the expert. You're down there in the South. I mean, explain to me. I know the man's got arm strength personified. I know he could fling the ball all over the field. But what are we missing, or what did an abundance of people miss? Because this dude, and the way these Kansas City Chiefs talk about him, I'm like, what NFL scouts, where were you guys? How did you miss? I mean, Andy Reid grabbed him early in the first round. Yeah. But what did you guys miss on him? What's up with this guy?
I mean, again, don't forget Baker was there too.
That's right.
I mean,
that's right.
Of course, Florida had Tim Tebow and Cam Newton at the same time.
That's right. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, he was interesting because, I mean, I started hearing his name a lot last year, but because it was Texas Tech and because they really weren't very good, people just didn't pay attention to him during the season. He got noticed, but it was only when you started talking to scouts. So I'm struggling to come up with a really good answer for you because he was not on our radar screen.
And it's interesting because, like I said, you don't miss much, Paul, if anything at all. And I look at some of these young quarterbacks in the National Football League, the Carson Wentz of the world, the Jared Goffs of the world, obviously Patrick Mahomes now, Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston, not necessarily that young anymore. They've been in the league about 4 years. But who are you most excited by based on what you've seen in their collegiate careers and what you anticipated they would be in their professional careers? Who are you most excited about when I bring up young quarterbacks in today's National Football League?
Well, I'm not excited about Baker Mayfield.
Okay. You have not been. You've been consistent about that.
I still like Darnold, and I know that he's coming off a rock, but I like what I've seen so far of him. I think he's tough, and I think once he just can escape the bubble of the New York tabloids.
Yes.
Right. I came in here last Tuesday night. This is after the win, and the guy driving me to the hotel. I mean, he said, "This guy's better than Joe Namath." I said,
"Oh my goodness!"
But that's
he actually said that, right? He actually said that.
But you live here, you know. I mean, I come and go. So I mean, I think that's something that those are guys I'm paying close attention to. I'm still anxious to see Josh Allen. Maybe not yet,
yes.
but I mean, what I saw of him last year had me believing that he was going to go very high, that he was going to not go very high, right, but be very good.
And in Buffalo, though, I'm worried about that.
Yeah, and I like I think I told you, I would have taken Rosen ahead of Darnold. And again, these are all things that take time. I always hate to see quarterbacks rushed along, but in the NFL, there's no time.
How are you feeling about Clemson and what you've seen getting back to college football, whether it's Trevor Lawrence or Kelly Bryant? People have talked so much about Tua and Hurts at Alabama. I'm not saying nothing's been written or mentioned about Lawrence and Bryant, but you haven't heard Dabo Swinney going through the level of scrutiny for him trying to make a decision about who that starting quarterback is going to be, at least in the first couple of weeks.
Because I think he knows Lawrence is the better quarterback by far, but when it really mattered in the A&M game, he went with the veteran. And I think Kelly Bryant won that game. Lawrence came in, had the big pass, but that was pretty fortuitous to catch that one. I think ultimately to win a national championship, he's going to need Lawrence. I'm underwhelmed by Clemson so far. They really just didn't do much for me in that A&M game. But the question now for Clemson, though,
that's a good game though. 28-26.
Oh, it was phenomenal.
That was a phenomenal game.
It shouldn't have been that close.
Yeah, on the road. Because you started off the show talking about the importance of home field in college football. That does matter.
But they walked into a trap. Last year, Alabama went down there. That was the famous rat poison game, and Alabama was won by 8, and they were holding on for dear life at the end, and because of that circumstance. But I still thought Clemson would be able to deal with it. Now, Clemson doesn't have much left on their schedule, though, because Florida State, which is always their biggest game, we've already talked about.
That's right.
They've lost in years past to Pittsburgh. They lost last year to Syracuse. I mean, Dino Babers is doing a nice job, and you know that program better than I do.
Right.
3 years ago, Clemson nearly lost to NC State. NC State had a chip shot field goal to win. I bring all this up because they have a blind spot. You'll look up one day on Saturday afternoon and they'll be trailing in a game they shouldn't be.
Finally, we got a team on the East Coast, at least in the Northeast. We got Syracuse up here. They're undefeated right now with Dino Babers. You know, I spoke at the school. I'm trying to be an inspiration to the Orangemen. I'm trying to be an inspiration. They're making me proud thus far, Paul Finebaum. The Syracuse Orangemen are making me proud. Your thoughts about what you've seen from the undefeated Orangemen?
No, I've liked him for a long time. When he was in Kentucky, I thought he was a star. As a matter of fact, I was talking to an AD who's now at one of the biggest schools in the country. He was looking for a coach somewhere else at a previous job, and he mentioned Dino's name to me. He said, I'm not ready to go after this guy yet. Of course, considering the guy he hired, he should have. I'll tell you off the air. Right. He projects so well, and I think Syracuse is lucky to have him right now because he is a bona fide star. They'll run into a wall eventually unless they can get you up for a pregame every time.
Gotcha. They're lucky to have him, the athletic director, too. My former boss, our former boss, Mr. John Wildhack here. I'm giving John Wildhack a shout out because I love the man. Always love you too, man. I'm going to be on your show at the
I cannot wait.
At the top of the hour.
That's a major event where I live.
I'm coming to the Paul Finebaum show at the top of the hour. All right, buddy. Thanks so much. Always appreciate you, my man. The one and only Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A.
Guys, let's be real. When you look good, you feel good. At the JCPenney wardrobe sale, you can get 50% off select men's suits separate, sport coats, dress pants, and accessories. Plus, select dress shirts, buy one, get one free. Raise your game with Collection by Michael Strahan. All the right looks to take your style to the next level. Also, save an extra 20% off with your JCPenney credit card and coupon or extra 15% off with any other method of payment. Hurry in. JCPenney. Style and value for all. Pricing and coupon valid 9/13 and 9/23. Credit offer subject to credit approval. Some exclusions and restrictions apply. See store at jcp.com for coupon and details.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
According to reports, Jimmy Butler, star guard for the Minnesota Timberwolves, has asked Coach Tom Thibodeau, who's also the president of basketball operations out there in Minnesota, he has asked Tom Thibodeau to be traded. Jimmy Butler would like to be traded. I happen to know that the New York Knicks are one of the destinations that he would like to land in. He would like to be with New York, with the New York Knicks. In order for the New York Knicks to acquire him, according to some reports, Courtney Lee and Frank Ntilikina would suffice. My attitude is, if that's what the New York Knicks have to give up, get it done. Now, obviously, they're gonna want a first round pick as well. I'm not sure I'd give that up, but I would definitely give up Courtney Lee and Frank Ntilikina for him, and a second round pick or a first round pick years down the road or something. Nothing immediate. That's what I would do. So, some other NBA news involving Mark Cuban I'll give to you in just a couple of minutes. He's making a $10 million donation. I'll explain what that's all about in the minutes to come. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. To the phones we go right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Let's go to Alyssa in Connecticut. You're live with Stephen A. Alyssa, how are you? How's everything?
I'm good. How about you, Stephen A?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say about Brady and Belichick, I got nothing against Brady wanting to divorce Belichick as a Patriots fan for a really long time because of how he's treated him.
Neither do I. But let me, just for clarification purposes, I need to know specifically what is your belief as it pertains to how Bill Belichick has treated Tom Brady.
Brady's been the good soldier, the lieutenant to Belichick's captain, following through on everything that he said and taking pay cuts, all that stuff, so he could go out and get other players to help him win championships.
Okay.
But Belichick wanted to pay Jimmy G more money this year, and yet when Brady wanted to, hold out, get a little bit more cash, Belichick didn't want to up his contract or anything like that.
Okay. So you don't have any problem. So in other words, if you had to choose between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, you choose Tom Brady.
No, right now I choose Bill Belichick.
Okay. But you don't have any problem with how Tom Brady's feeling because of the manner in which he's been treated.
So I would have gone Brady.
Okay. I got you. I appreciate the call, Alyssa. Thank you so much for calling. Let's go to my man Carlton. I knew I'd hear from him. I knew I'd hear from you today, buddy. I could have predicted this. This was definitely coming because I'm talking about Belichick and Tom Brady. There's no way Carlton was not going to call into the show today. What's up, buddy?
Let me see if I can set you and Ian O'Connor straight, okay? First off, Belichick has been constructively fired by Kraft for both the Butler benching, but more importantly, the subsequent smearing of him in the press for 2 days after the Super Bowl until all his teammates came to his defense and said it was all bunk, all the garbage about weed use and late for practices and all of the baloney that the Patriots Mafia put out there. And I wish you would stop Marley and Max from repeating that garbage over and over and over again every time you talk about Malcolm Butler, because it was all denied by everybody on the Patriots, including Tom Brady. That's point number one. Point number two, Belichick was 41-57 before Tom Brady fell into his lap.
That was true, but that was 18 years ago, Carlton.
But come on, Stephen A. He was drafted by Bobby Greer, and then Bobby Greer was fired 2 months after he drafted Tom Brady in the 2000 draft. And since that time, Bill Belichick's 9 games under 500 without Brady in totality as an NFL head coach. And by the way, despite the Castle year, Belichick is 1 game under 500 as the Patriots head coach when Tom Brady has not started. He has a losing record with the New England Patriots without Tom Brady as his starting quarterback. But I want to get to what Ian O'Connor said. He quoted somebody unnamed, that Belichick was among the Patriots officials who had serious doubt that Brady had no involvement in Deflategate. Obviously, Ian O'Connor is talking to somebody that is trying to deflect attention away from Bill Belichick.
Sure.
What's that?
I said, sure. There's no denying that. Usually when you're doing a book or something along those lines, whether even if you're writing an article, you talk to the people that are close to the situation and you go with what they tell you. That's all you can do.
Well, I know, but it's coming off the way it's quoted, and I'm looking at the ESPN article as we speak, that that on shade on Brady, and it's the exact opposite. And O'Connor's also quoted here as saying Brady told his friends that his weak answer to the news conference question about whether he was a cheater, that was, by the way, in the first press conference after Deflategate broke.
I remember.
He said, I don't believe so. And Ian O'Connor saying that didn't portray consciousness of Deflategate guilt, but rather thoughts of earlier Spygate affairs. It did portray Deflategate guilt, but guilt about knowing what Belichick did. And do you remember when
Time. Let me interrupt you. How do you know that? Because here's the deal, Carlton. You sit up there and say guilt in knowing that what Bill Belichick did, absolving Tom Brady from anything associated with Deflategate, when in fact it's entirely plausible that both of them might have been in on it. Because you sit up there, you're an experienced veteran, you're getting the football from center, you know how the football feels.
Here's how I know. His close friend, immediately when Belichick first gave the press conference, before Brady's press conference, said, he just chucked this thing right in your lap. That's what Brady's friend was. And if Brady was cheating, he would have said, no, I'm not a cheater. But saying, I don't believe so, indicates he knew what the Patriots were doing. He didn't want it, just like with Spygate, he knew what they were doing. He didn't want it. That was Bill's baby. And so it was, Brady's a stand-up guy. He's always giving credit to all of his teammates. He's always gone out of his way to deflect positive attention to the people he works with. Bill's the exact opposite. So again, if it was a Brady operation, Brady would have said, no way, no how.
I'm not implying that it was a Brady operation by any stretch of the imagination. All I'm trying to say is your willingness to completely absolve him from any shred of guilt whatsoever and put it solely on the shoulders of Bill Belichick, I think is a bit extreme. That's all I'm saying.
Bill Belichick hired Jim McNally into the officials' locker room in 2008. That's exactly when the Patriots' fumble numbers went from middle of the pack to best in the NFL by far over the next 8 years. By the way, since they got busted for Deflategate, they're right back to the middle of the pack.
That's right, and I totally get that. But again, that still doesn't address my question of you completely absolving the very quarterback that touches the football more than anybody from this equation. That's my issue with what you're saying.
Wants it and Tom doesn't want it, it's going to happen? Yes, it's going to happen. And if Tom wants it and Bill doesn't want it, it's not going to happen.
Well, you don't know that. This is not the day for you to make that argument, Carlton. He wanted Jimmy Garoppolo to stay. Jimmy Garoppolo's gone. He wanted Alex Guerrero, the fitness and life coach, gone. Alex Guerrero is back in the mix. This ain't the day for you to make that argument, Carlton.
And you know why that is. That's because Robert Kraft understands who is primary differentiating factor as to why they've had the success that they have had. And it ain't Bill. It's not Bill.
For now, I understand that. But Bill Belichick, listen, wouldn't you agree, before I let you get on out of here, wouldn't you agree that there is more to a winning football team than just a great quarterback? The Green Bay Packers, I believe, have the best I've ever seen. How many Super Bowl titles does Mike McCarthy have? There's more to go with just being just having a talented quarterback.
Here's what I can tell you. It was Bill and his minions that were actively smearing Malcolm Butler after the Super Bowl to deflect attention from what Bill did for 2 days. And that's why everybody came to his defense, Stephen A.
I agree with that.
All the players.
Hold on, you and I both agree with that. I lamented that over the airwaves for a week. You know that.
It was Bill who smeared him, and that's why Josh McDaniels did the 180, Stephen A. Kraft on Tuesday decided, I've had enough with this. And he couldn't just fire Bill, so he constructively fired him. You watch. Belichick's going to retire after this year.
I guarantee. I don't believe that for 1 second. I think that Bill Belichick will be around for at least 2 or 3 more years. I'll talk to you when it
happens.
All right. I'll give it up to you if it happens. I just don't believe it. Appreciate you, though, buddy. Thank you so much. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's always the number to call. It's 888-729-3776. Carlton crazy. Because Carlton's going to sit up there and do something to call out Bill Belichick. Make no mistake about that. There is no more notorious Bill Belichick hater than Carlton in Florida. There's just no doubt. In Tampa, there's no doubt. There's absolutely no doubt whatsoever. But I ain't mad at him because he usually knows what the hell he's talking about. That much I can tell you. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. I love the fact that October is around the corner. Baseball playoffs is percolated. I can't wait. I'm just hopeful that my Yankees can at least get to a divisional playoff round and not be bounced out, in a 1-game playoff game against the A's. That better not happen. I digress, though. Your calls to close out the show in a minute with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm as happy as a clam.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will be, quote, as happy as a clam, unquote. The Geico legal team cannot accurately verify clams even experience the complex human emotional state known as happiness. As an invertebrate mollusk living half submerged on the ocean floor with no arms, legs, or wireless access, what's there to be happy about? A clam's all like, oh, I'm so happy I didn't get turned into New England clam chowder today. Pronounced regionally as chowder. Chowder. Oh, that's so fun to say. What were we talking about again?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Some news from Adrian Wojnarowski, our NBA insider extraordinaire, on Twitter. He said sources, according to sources. This is 3 minutes ago. According to sources, after the NBA investigation into workplace misconduct, Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban and the NBA have agreed that he will donate $10 million to organizations that promote women in leadership roles and combat domestic violence. NBA can only fine $2.5 million by the rules. If you recall, there were some issues that went on within the Dallas Mavericks organization. Obviously, Mark Cuban is the boss. Folks were claiming that he was aware of some of the things that were going on. Similar to I won't say similar to an Urban Meyer situation, but essentially, you know, you being the man in charge, you were aware of some things you should have done more. It's basically what Mark Cuban is being accused of, and obviously he's agreed to donate $10 million. We can debate tomorrow whether or not that's enough in the eyes of many. Should that close the situation, or are you going to feel the same way about him that you felt about Urban Meyer or less? Another day, we can have that discussion. Let's get back to the phones before we get on out of here. Herbert, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, what's going on, Stephen A?
Go ahead, man. You're live on air. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to talk about Belichick and Brady. Yep. I think Belichick wants to trade Brady because he believes he could win a Super Bowl without Brady. Do you agree with that?
Hold on, wait a minute. Belichick probably is confident enough that he can win the Super Bowl without it. But let me answer that question by posing you a better question. Is it that he believes that he can win without Brady? Or that he's like, I don't know, some player who he's like a Kobe, for example, that wants to prove he can win without Brady, like Kobe wanted to prove he could win without Shaq?
Right. I think he wants to prove he can win without Brady.
Got it. Appreciate the call. Good point. You might be right. You might be right. Zach, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Zach. How are you?
Good afternoon, Stephen A. I want to talk to you about how you aren't giving Mahomes the love he's deserving of. Mm-hmm. On Monday, you special, or rather, he is doing special things. But Joey Bosa wasn't there for the Chargers, and the Steelers had a terrible secondary.
Don't hold me accountable for the Bosa. I just meant the Chargers' defense ain't that impressive. One man like Bosa ain't gonna make that huge of a difference. But I get what you're saying. Go ahead.
All right. The Steelers game would have been a complete blowout had it not been for the defensive penalties on Steven Nelson and his holding penalties.
I agree.
With Brown.
I agree.
Mahomes has thrown to 7 different receivers, including the fullback, and that list
let me rush you because we got to get ready to get on out of here. The man has been phenomenal. He completed 82% of his passes against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know Patrick Mahomes can ball, and I like him. What I'm trying to say is this. Can I get more than 2 games, Zach? Against San Diego and Pittsburgh? Can I have more than 2 games before we anoint him the second coming? Don't you remember that Cam Newton threw for over 400 yards in his first 2 games of his professional career? Can I get more than 2 games?
Well, I mean, you got 3. You got the Broncos game last year. He torched that Broncos.
Come on. Stop it. That was at the end of the season. Stop it. But don't worry about it. I'll be here watching Patrick Mahomes, and I like him. Listen, you're not alone. Kareem Hunt told me this. Travis Kelce told me this. Andy Reid told me this. Man, these brothers love Patrick Mahomes. They love him. I got it. All I'm saying is, can I get more than 2 games? I didn't call him a scrub, but can I get more than 2 games? I will say this, though. I wish the Giants had him. Lord, do they need him. Talk to y'all in 22 hours. Until then, Stephen A. Smith signing off. Peace and love.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Guys, let's be real. When you look good, you feel good. At the JCPenney wardrobe sale, you can get 50% off select men's suits, separate sport coats, dress pants, and accessories. Plus, select dress shirts, buy one, get one free. Raise your game with Collection by Michael Strahan. All the right looks to take your style to the next level.